Mononoke. In feudal Japan, there are spirits called Mononoke that literally feed off human malice. They're born from secrets buried so deep they've turned toxic. This mysterious medicine seller wanders around with his ornate box of tools, but here's the catch. He can't do anything until he figures out three specific things: the form, the truth, and the reason. Only when all three pieces click together can he actually draw his sword and cut through the veil between worlds. Now, what makes Mononoke absolutely terrifying isn't the supernatural stuff. It's how every single spirit comes from human cruelty that's been festering for years. You've got this pregnant woman who died tragically, and she births a vengeful cat spirit. Family secrets transform into these writhing, dark entities. Each case peels back all the polite social layers to show you the rot underneath. Family secrets, abandonment, abuse, tragedy, but it's all wrapped up in these gorgeous traditional Japanese art styles. The medicine seller himself? Total enigma. He's not quite human, not quite spirit, just existing in that weird space between worlds. His painted face and knowing smile tell you he's seen every possible variation of human evil, but he keeps doing his job with this detached professionalism. He gets that Mononoke aren't invaders. They're revelations. Here's the devastating part about Mononoke. It's not that spirits exist. It's that they're created by the exact same social structures that are supposed to keep everything harmonious. Every polite silence, every shameful secret, every time someone looks away from suffering. It all feeds this darkness until it literally takes physical form. The medicine seller isn't battling monsters, he's performing autopsies on a society that creates them, one beautiful and horrifying case at a time. Possession. Anna and Mark's relationship falls apart in this Berlin apartment where the walls practically breathe tension. It starts as regular domestic drama, but then it spirals into cosmic horror as Anna's behavior gets increasingly erratic, violent, and inhuman. She's not having an affair, though. She's gestating something that defies classification, a disturbing entity that represents what their relationship has actually decayed into. The real horror here isn't that infamous subway breakdown scene or the creature design. It's how the movie literally shows you what happens when a marriage dies. Anna doesn't get possessed by some outside force. She becomes the physical manifestation of everything their relationship suppressed, denied, and left to rot. The creature isn't invading their life, it is their life, just revealed without all the social makeup we usually wear. Meanwhile, Mark's descending into paranoid investigation mode, hiring private detectives, confronting Anna about her mysterious disappearances. Even Berlin itself becomes part of the horror. The divided city mirrors their fractured minds, and the wall represents not just political separation, but all those barriers we build to avoid facing what we've become. The most terrifying realization? It's not that love can transform into something monstrous. It's that the monster was always there, waiting beneath the surface of every intimate relationship. The creature Anna births isn't some alien invader. It's the true face of their marriage once you strip away all pretense. Some unions don't end in divorce, they end in metamorphosis, creating something that should never have been allowed to exist. Iron lung. Picture this: a crimson ocean stretching infinite and red, this vast sea on a distant moon where something massive moves beneath the surface. You're trapped in the iron lung, a makeshift submarine barely big enough for one person, equipped with basic controls and a camera that only takes grainy photos. Your mission sounds simple: map coordinates in this alien sea. Your reality? You are completely, utterly alone with nothing but your own breathing and the occasional something hitting your hull. Iron Lung's claustrophobia isn't just about cramped quarters. It's how it weaponizes isolation against your sanity. You're navigating blind, relying on sonar pings and pure faith, never seeing what's around you except through pixelated snapshots that just raise more questions. Strange structures loom in the distance. Shadows move beneath you. Something large enough to make your vessel look like a toy stalks through those crimson depths. The Crimson Ocean isn't just scenery either, it's practically a character, pulsing with its own rhythms and hiding its own secrets. Every photograph feels like you're intruding, documenting things that were never meant to be seen. The coordinates you're mapping lead to locations that make zero sense, structures that suggest intelligence, purpose, malevolence. Here's what gets you. The most devastating realization isn't that you're trapped in a crimson ocean, it's that you're not alone in it, and whatever shares these waters has been waiting for someone foolish enough to enter its domain. Your submarine isn't protection, it's a tin can floating in something's hunting grounds. Every photograph brings you closer to understanding that you weren't sent here to explore. You were sent here to feed whatever's been starving in the dark. Ajin. You discover you're an Ajin when you die in a traffic accident and immediately regenerate. Your body reconstructs itself while your mind tries to process this impossible reality. Immortality comes with perks. You can summon IBM, invisible black matter, these ghostly entities that fight for you, basically extensions of your subconscious given murderous form. But here's the real kicker. You're now hunted by a government that sees you not as a person, but as valuable research material. What makes the Ajin universe disturbing isn't the supernatural abilities, it's how immortality reveals just how fragile human rights really are. The moment your death certificate gets voided, so does your citizenship. You become property, something to be studied and exploited. The government runs unethical research programs, knowing that Ajin can endure prolonged suffering because they literally cannot die. The biggest monster in this world isn't even an Ajin. It's Satu, an immortal who's fully embraced his status as a living weapon. He orchestrates terrorist attacks with the detached professionalism of someone who's learned that human morality is a luxury only the mortal get to enjoy. When death has no meaning, life loses its value, and ethics become optional guidelines rather than actual rules. The devastating realization about Ajin isn't that immortality exists. It's that it strips away every protection society offers its members. Your immortality doesn't make you superhuman. It makes you post-human, existing in this legal and moral void where your suffering has infinite duration and your rights mean absolutely nothing. You wanted to live forever, but you never considered that forever might be spent in a laboratory, aware and suffering, with death no longer available as an escape. House LLC. On opening night at the Abaddon Hotel, 15 people were lost in what authorities called a malfunction, but the survivors know better. The Hell House crew thought they were just creating scares through practical effects and theatrical tricks, but they were actually conducting a seance, using their manufactured horror to thin the veil between worlds. House LLC's horror isn't jump scares or demonic imagery, it's revealing the danger of commercializing fear. The crew doesn't just create a haunted house, they create a feeding ground for entities that literally survive on terror. Every scream from a paying customer becomes a prayer to something hungry. Every moment of fear is sacrificed to powers that have been waiting for someone foolish enough to provide a steady supply of emotional energy. The documentary format shows you the tragedy through found footage, interviews, investigation. But the real horror is understanding that the Hell House wasn't haunted until they made it so. Their fake ghosts attracted real ones. Their artificial terror summoned authentic evil. The most devastating realization? The hotel wasn't cursed, not until entrepreneurs decided to profit from fear and accidentally created a business model that fed something ancient and patient. The haunted house didn't fail because of supernatural interference. It succeeded exactly as designed, just not by the humans who thought they were in charge. The Outlast Trials. Deep in a Cold War-era facility, volunteers undergo psychological conditioning, designed to break down who they are and rebuild them as compliant assets. But this isn't random cruelty, it's quality control, systematic testing of how much psychological stress a human mind can absorb before it becomes useful. What makes the Outlast Trials disturbing isn't its psychological manipulation, it's how it gamifies trauma, turning survival into this cooperative experience where your distress gets measured, quantified, and optimized. You're not a victim. You're a beta tester for techniques that'll be applied to countless others. Your responses serve as data points and algorithms designed to calibrate the perfect amount of psychological pressure. The facility runs like any corporate research division. Performance metrics, quality assurance protocols, continuous improvement processes, the whole 9 yards. Your tormentors aren't even sadists. They're professionals doing their jobs, following procedures that someone spent years perfecting. The horror gets industrialized, systematized, made efficient. Here's the terrifying realization. You're not trapped in a nightmare. You're trapped in a focus group, and your psychological breakdown is exactly the product they're trying to develop. The research doesn't end when you escape. It ends when you've been transformed into something that can be replicated, mass-produced, and distributed for purposes you'll never understand. You weren't chosen as a victim, you were selected as a prototype. Your successful conditioning becomes the template for processing thousands more. Gozu, dream logic, literally invades waking reality when these criminal enforcers stumble into a nightmarish underworld. Bodies just transform. No warning, no explanation. They just change. Identities become completely fluid, like you can't tell who's who anymore. Causality breaks down so thoroughly that cause and effect become totally separate things that don't even know each other exist. All those familiar criminal codes these guys live by? They dissolve completely in this landscape where meaning itself has become unreliable. People have conversations that feel incredibly significant, despite being complete nonsense. Nothing connects to anything else in ways you can understand, yet you start seeing these patterns that feel cosmically important. Numbers keep repeating mysteriously. Faces morph between total strangers. Events loop back on themselves without ever reaching any kind of resolution. Characters speak in complete non sequiturs that somehow communicate essential information. Don't ask me how, but it works. Buildings contain rooms that absolutely shouldn't fit within their architecture. Time moves in directions that literally don't have names. Here's the kicker, though. The criminals discover they're not lost in someone else's nightmare. They're learning that consensus reality was always held together by nothing more than our collective agreement to ignore how fundamentally incoherent everything actually is. Reality operates by rules that exist purely to be broken. The Canal. Your peaceful home starts crumbling when historical tragedies begin bleeding through into the present. Turns out comfort is always temporary. It's built on suffering that's just been displaced rather than actually eliminated. Your house sits on land that's literally soaked in forgotten pain. Decades of accumulated injustice have poisoned the very foundations of family life. The past refuses to stay buried, obviously. Supernatural phenomena manifest as these specific retributions for crimes that happened way before you existed, yet somehow you're being held accountable. The canal becomes this conduit between past and present, carrying all that accumulated trauma directly into your living room where it contaminates everything you thought was safe. Every single comfort in your life exists because horror was displaced somewhere else, geographically, temporally, socially. But displacement is always temporary because injustice seeks resolution with geological patience. Your family photos start showing faces you don't recognize. Your home's architecture shifts to accommodate rooms that served much darker purposes. The haunting reveals that innocence is always borrowed. Every peaceful moment exists in debt to pain that was merely delayed rather than actually prevented. Noroi, curses spread through investigation itself. They're using documentation as their primary transmission vector. This documentary filmmaker researching supernatural phenomena discovers that his cameras and recording equipment aren't just capturing the curse. They're amplifying it, transforming what should be objective documentation into active participation in these malevolent forces. Each interview he conducts feeds the malevolence. Every piece of evidence he gathers gives it new ways to infect contemporary life. The curse doesn't fear exposure, it requires it. It's using journalistic integrity as a breeding ground for ancient evil in digital form. What starts as scholarly investigation becomes unwitting collaboration with forces that have waited centuries for the right medium. Technology that's designed to preserve and transmit human knowledge becomes a highway for supernatural infection. Each viewing of the documentary spreads the curse to new victims who think they're just consuming entertainment. The investigation reveals that some knowledge should never be preserved. Certain truths are dangerous specifically because they're true. Our modern world's obsession with documentation has created unprecedented opportunities for ancient evils to achieve global reach through fiber optic networks and satellite transmissions. Devilman Crybaby. Ancient demons possess human hosts throughout this apocalyptic world, but here's the thing. Possession only amplifies what was already there. Anger, desire, hatred, fear. These aren't demonic influences corrupting pure souls. They're human nature finally given permission to flourish without social restraint. Society breaks down into paranoid chaos as ordinary people commit terrible acts that make their demonic counterparts seem tame by comparison. The apocalypse reveals this disturbing truth about our species. Humanity required no external corruption to become monstrous. Civilization was always just a thin mask over our primal instincts. Demons don't actually transform humans. They simply provide permission to become what we always were beneath social conditioning. The possessed retain their memories, their personalities, their relationships. They just lose the inhibitions that prevented them from acting on impulses everyone harbors but suppresses. Love becomes possessive obsession. Protection becomes controlling behavior. Justice becomes righteous anger. The most horrifying transformations don't occur in the possessed, but in ordinary humans who reveal their darker impulses when faced with genuine existential threat.
Subscribe for more interesting stuff. Tell us your experience in the comments.